I recognize that face. He's the father of my missing daughter." Martha Cooper was dusting the furniture in the living room of the mansion where she had started working just 2 weeks ago when her eyes fixed on the golden picture frame on the dresser. Her hands began to tremble uncontrollably, the cleaning cloth falling to the floor as she stared at the photograph with a mixture of shock and recognition that left her breathless. Her employer, Eleanor Sterling, walked into the room at that moment, wearing her elegant white suit, and immediately noticed that something was wrong with her new employee. "Martha, are you okay?" Eleanor asked, approaching with concern. Martha pointed at the portrait with a trembling finger, her voice coming out in fragments. "Ma'am, I recognize that face. He's the father of my missing daughter." Eleanor felt her blood run cold. That was the portrait of her husband Thomas, who had mysteriously disappeared 15 years ago, leaving her a widow with a young daughter to raise. "What are you saying?" Eleanor tried to stay calm, but her voice trembled. "For 15 years I've been searching for my daughter Claire. She was 3 years old when she vanished during a trip to the park. And this man—" Martha touched the glass of the picture frame. "This man is Stephen Parker, the father of my little girl. He abandoned me when I was pregnant and then came back into my life when she was already 2, promising he wanted to start a family." Eleanor stepped back a few feet, shaking her head. "That's impossible. This is my husband, Thomas Sterling. You must be mistaken." Martha reached inside her uniform and pulled out an old, worn-out wallet. With trembling hands, she opened it and showed an old, faded photograph. "Look closely, ma'am. It's the same man." Eleanor took the photograph and examined it carefully. The resemblance was truly striking, but she refused to believe it. However, when her eyes fixed on a small scar on the neck of the man in Martha's photo, exactly like the one her husband had, she felt the ground give way beneath her feet. "Where did you get this photo?" Eleanor asked, her voice now barely a whisper. "From the day we met, at the Chicago French Market. I was 18, and he said his name was Stephen. We dated for 2 years. I got pregnant, and he disappeared. He came back when Claire was already walking, saying he had changed, that he wanted to be a father. We lived together for a year, but then—" Martha couldn't finish the sentence. Tears began to stream down her face, while Eleanor watched her in shock. Mrs. Hazel, the housekeeper who had worked in the house for over 20 years, appeared at the living room door. She had overheard part of the conversation, and her expression revealed she knew more than she should. "Mrs. Hazel," Eleanor turned to the housekeeper, "do you know anything about this?" The older woman hesitated, looking nervously between the two of them. "Mrs. Eleanor, maybe it's better if you sit down." "Speak up," Eleanor demanded. "Mr. Thomas. Well, before he left, he was very restless. He received strange phone calls, left without explaining where he was going. Once I heard him on the phone talking about a child, about responsibilities he had left behind." Eleanor sat down heavily in the armchair, feeling as if her world were crumbling. "This can't be true. Thomas loved me. We had a happy family." Martha approached slowly. "Ma'am, I know it's hard to believe, but my daughter. She disappeared on the same day he left home for the last time. I never heard from either of them again." "He wouldn't take a child," Eleanor protested. "Thomas would never do something like that." "Maybe he didn't take her," Martha said softly. "Maybe someone took them both." At that moment, Audrey, Eleanor's 17-year-old daughter, came running down the stairs. She had heard the raised voices and came to investigate. "Mum, what's going on here?" Eleanor looked at her daughter, trying to shield her from that disturbing revelation. "Nothing, dear. Go back to your room." But Audrey was a clever teenager and sensed the tension in the air, her eyes fixed on the photograph that was still in her mother's hands. "Isn't that a picture of Dad?" she said, moving closer to get a better look. "Audrey, please." "Mom, I recognize that person," Audrey pointed at Martha. "Isn't she the lady who was in the plaza last week, asking about a missing girl?" Martha felt her heart race. "You saw me?" "Yes. You were showing a picture to several people, asking if anyone had seen a little girl. I wanted to help, but—" "Audrey, you never told me about this," Eleanor scolded. "I didn't think it was important. So many people are looking for missing relatives. Martha pulled out another photograph from her wallet, this one of a small girl with curly hair and a gap-toothed smile. That's the little girl I was asking about, my Claire. Audrey looked closely at the photo, and her expression changed completely. Oh my God, she looks a lot like me when I was little. Eleanor snatched the photo from her daughter's hands and examined it carefully. It was true. The resemblance between Claire and Audrey at the same age was striking. That's just a coincidence, Eleanor murmured, but her voice lacked conviction. Mrs. Hazel cleared her throat. Mrs. Eleanor, maybe it's time for you to go up to the attic. The attic? Why? Because there are things up there that Mr. Thomas stored before he left, things you never wanted to go through. Eleanor had avoided the attic for 15 years. It was where Thomas kept his personal belongings, and after his disappearance, she had locked everything up there, unable to deal with the memories. I'll go up with you, Martha offered. No, Eleanor reacted sharply. I won't allow a stranger to go through my husband's belongings. Mom, Audrey intervened, if there's a chance we can find out the truth about Dad, shouldn't we look into it? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Eleanor went up to the attic accompanied only by Audrey and Mrs. Hazel, leaving Martha waiting in the living room. The place was dusty and full of boxes that had remained untouched for years. The box that Mr. Thomas stored in his final days is over there. Mrs. Hazel pointed to a corner. Eleanor opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were documents, photographs, and letters. Many letters. My dear Martha, Eleanor read the heading of one of the letters aloud, feeling as if she had been punched in the stomach. Mum, Audrey tried to comfort her. Eleanor continued reading, her voice breaking with every word. I know it's hard to understand why I need to do this, but it's the only way to protect the two of you. Claire needs to grow up away from the dangers that surround us. I promise that one day I'll explain everything. Audrey found another letter, this one addressed to her. My little Audrey, when you grow up and read this letter, I hope you can forgive me. Your father is not the man you think you know. I did things I'm ashamed of, and now I need to protect you from the consequences of my mistakes. Eleanor let the letters fall and began to cry. He really did have a double life. How could I have been so blind? Mrs. Hazel picked up a sealed envelope that was at the bottom of the box. He asked me to deliver this only if something happened to him. I thought he had just run away, so I never opened it. Inside the envelope was a key and an address for a safety deposit box in the center of town. We have to go there, Audrey decided. Audrey, I don't know if I'm ready for more revelations. Mom, that woman down there lost her daughter. If there's a chance we can find out what happened, we owe it to her. Eleanor went down to the ground floor, where Martha was waiting anxiously. We found some things, Eleanor admitted reluctantly. It seems that Thomas or Stephen really did have a double life. Martha stood up from the sofa where she was sitting. And my daughter. Was there any clue about my Claire? Eleanor showed her the letters. He mentions that he did something to protect both of you, your daughter and you. Protect them from what? We don't know yet. But we found this, Eleanor said, showing her the key. It's to a storage unit. Maybe we'll find more answers there. Martha took Eleanor's hand. Please let me go with you. I need to know what happened to my little girl. Eleanor hesitated. For 15 years she had idealized her husband, creating a romantic version of his disappearance. Now she was being forced to face a very different reality. All right, but if we find out something you don't want to hear, I just want the truth, Martha interrupted. 15 years without knowing if my daughter is alive or if she's okay. Any truth is better than this agony. At the storage unit, they found documents that revealed a complex web of false identities. Thomas Sterling was just one of the names he used. There were passports, birth certificates, bank accounts, all pointing to a much more complicated life than either of them could have imagined. Look at this, Audrey said, finding a folder marked Life Insurance, Claire Parker Cooper. Martha felt her legs go weak. He took out a life insurance policy for my daughter. Eleanor examined the documents. Not just a policy. He deposited money into an account in her name every month for 3 years, until she turned 6. 6? Martha did the math quickly. That means he knew where she was until she was 6. She was alive. But what happened after that? Audrey asked. Eleanor kept digging through the papers and found something that made her go pale. Martha, there's a document here from a private school. A Claire Parker Cooper was enrolled until age 7. Which school? St. Jude Academy in Asheville. Martha clutched the paper tightly. Asheville? My daughter was in Asheville? At least until she was 7, Eleanor confirmed. After that, there are no more records. We have to go there, Martha decided immediately. Martha, that was 8 years ago. The chances of finding any clues are minimal. I don't care. It's the first real lead I've had in 15 years. Audrey looked at her mother. Mum, don't you think we should help her? Eleanor sighed deeply. Her life had been turned upside down in just one day, but looking at Martha's desperation, she couldn't refuse. All right, let's go to Asheville. The 3-hour trip to Asheville was tense. Eleanor drove while Martha held the documents tightly, as if they might disappear at any moment. Audrey occasionally tried to break the silence, but the tension in the car was palpable. When they arrived at St. Jude Academy, they discovered that the school had closed 2 years earlier due to financial problems. The building was abandoned with boards over the windows. Now what? Audrey asked, discouraged. Let's look for people who used to work here, Martha suggested. Someone must remember a girl named Claire. They went to the city records office, where they got a list of the school's former employees. Their first stop was at the home of the former principal, Mrs. Evelyn, a 70-year-old woman who received them with suspicion. Claire Parker Cooper, Mrs. Evelyn repeated the name thoughtfully. Ah, yes, I remember her. A very intelligent girl, but she always seemed sad. Sad how? Martha asked anxiously. She always asked about her mother. She said she vaguely remembered a woman who sang to her. Her adoptive parents, Eleanor interrupted. Yes, the Millers. They were from New York City, but they came to live here because of his job. They said they had adopted the girl legally. And the man who paid for her school? Martha insisted. Mrs. Evelyn hesitated. There was a man who came to visit her every now and then. He said he was her uncle. He always brought gifts and money for expenses. But one day he stopped showing up, and shortly after the Millers moved away with the girl. Where did they go? I don't know for sure. I heard they went back to New York City, but they never confirmed. Eleanor asked for a description of the man, and Mrs. Evelyn described Thomas Stephen perfectly. Is there anything else you remember about Claire? Well, Mrs. Evelyn hesitated again. There's something strange. Shortly before they left, the girl came to me, very nervous. She said she had found an ID card with a different name in her room. The name was different from Claire Parker Cooper. What name? I don't remember exactly, but it was something like Anne? Or maybe Alice. It was a name with an A. Martha felt a pang of hope and despair at the same time. And you didn't do anything? I talked to the adoptive parents, but they said it was just a misunderstanding, that the girl was confused. A few days later, they moved away. Leaving Mrs. Evelyn's house, the 3 women sat in the car in silence. 15 years, Martha murmured. My daughter spent 15 years without knowing who she really is. We'll find her, Audrey said with determination. We'll go to New York City and look for the Millers. New York City is a huge city, Eleanor observed. How are we going to find a family that may have changed their name again? Through school records, Audrey suggested. If they enrolled Claire in any school in New York City, there must be records. Back in Chicago, they spent the next few days searching online and making calls to schools in New York City. Martha had asked for time off from her job at Eleanor's house, but strangely, Eleanor insisted she stay living at the mansion during the investigation. Why are you doing this for me? Martha asked one night while they drank tea in the kitchen. Because, Eleanor sighed, my husband destroyed 2 families. If there's a chance to repair at least part of the damage he caused, I have to try. Audrey walked into the kitchen at that moment carrying the laptop. Mom, Eleanor, I found something. She showed the screen to both of them. There's an Anne Claire Miller who graduated from high school in New York City last year. Her age matches Claire's perfectly, the Claire we're looking for. Martha held her breath. And did you get an address? Better than that. She's studying education at Columbia University. I got the college's contact information. Eleanor picked up the phone immediately. Hello, I'd like to speak with Anne Claire Miller. It's about a very important family matter. After a few minutes of transfers and explanations, Eleanor got the college's contact number. They'll pass the message along to her and ask her to get in touch with us, Eleanor informed. 2 hours later, the phone rang. Martha answered with trembling hands. Hello? Hi, I'm Anne Claire. They said you were looking for me. Is it about my adoptive parents? The young woman's voice made Martha start crying instantly. Claire, my daughter. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sorry, I think there's a mistake. My name is Anne Claire, and I don't know who you are. Sweetheart, my name is Martha. I'm your mother, your biological mother. You disappeared when you were 3 years old. That's impossible. My parents told me I was adopted because my biological mother because she couldn't take care of me. They lied, my child. I never stopped searching for you. Anne Claire was silent for several seconds. I need time to process this. Can you give me your address? I'll think about it and maybe we can meet. Martha gave her Eleanor's mansion address and hung up the phone. Then she broke down in tears of relief and nervousness. She's coming, was all she could say. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 3 days later, Anne Claire arrived in Chicago. She was an 18-year-old young woman, tall and slim, with the same curly hair as Martha and a smart, cautious look in her eyes. She brought a small suitcase and many questions. The first meeting was extremely tense. Anne Claire sat on the living room sofa, nervously looking at the 3 women in front of her. First of all, she began, I need you to understand that all of this is very confusing for me. My adoptive parents were always good to me. They told me my biological mother had abandoned me when I was a baby. Martha approached slowly. My daughter, I never abandoned you. You disappeared during a trip to the park. I searched for you desperately. The last time I saw you, you were playing on the playground while I chatted with other mothers. When I looked again, you were gone. And the man, my biological father? Eleanor answered that question. From what we've discovered, he was trying to protect you from some danger. But he was also living a double life. He was my husband, but he was also your father. Neither of us knew the other existed. Anne Claire looked closely at Eleanor. You're my stepmother. Technically, yes, but I didn't know Thomas had another family. Thomas? Anne Claire seemed confused. The documents I found said my father's name was Stephen. Same man, different names, Audrey explained. We found documents proving he used multiple identities. Anne Claire opened the backpack she had brought and pulled out a folder. Before coming here, I went back to my adoptive parents' house. They passed away in a car accident 2 years ago. I went through everything they had kept about my adoption. She spread several documents on the coffee table. I found this. It's a birth certificate with my real name, Claire Parker Cooper, and this, she showed a photo, is a picture of me at 3 years old with a woman. Martha took the photo and immediately recognized herself, younger, holding her little daughter. It's you, Martha whispered. It's really you. There's more, Anne Claire continued. I found letters, many letters, from someone who signed as C. He wrote to my adoptive parents, sending money and instructions on how to raise me. Eleanor picked up one of the letters and immediately recognized her husband's handwriting. Never tell Claire where she really came from. It's for her safety. When she turns 18, I'll explain everything. But he never explained, Anne Claire said bitterly. Why do you think he disappeared? We don't know, Eleanor admitted. He disappeared from my life on the same day you disappeared from your mother's life. Audrey, who had been quiet throughout the entire conversation, finally spoke. Anne, May I call you Anne? The young woman nodded. Do you have any memories from your childhood before your adoptive parents? Fragments. I remember a woman singing a lullaby and a man who carried me in his arms, but I always thought they were dreams. Martha began to sing softly. Sleep, sleep, my love, Mommy's here. Anne-Claire stopped breathing for a moment. That was the song, exactly that song. I sang it to you every night, Martha said, tears streaming down her face. Anne-Claire began to cry too. Why? Why did he do this to us? We don't know, Eleanor replied, but we're going to find out. Over the following days, Anne-Claire stayed at the mansion. Initially reserved, she gradually began to open up. Martha told stories of Claire's childhood, showing photo albums she had kept religiously for 15 years. You loved playing with dolls, Martha recalled, and you always asked me to braid your hair. I still love braids. Anne-Claire smiled for the first time since she had arrived. Audrey and Anne-Claire developed an unexpected friendship. Despite being a year apart in age, they discovered they had a lot in common. It's strange to think we're half-sisters, Audrey commented as they walked through the mansion's garden. Technically we are, but we never grew up together. It's like we're two strangers who happen to share a father. A father neither of us truly knew, Audrey added. Exactly. I always imagined what he would be like, whether he'd come get me one day, whether he'd explain why he gave me up for adoption. And I always wondered why he left, if it was our fault, if he really loved us. Anne-Claire stopped walking. Audrey, do you think he's still alive? I don't know. Sometimes I think yes, sometimes no. But if he is, he owes us an explanation for why he destroyed our families. That night, the four women gathered in the living room to discuss their next steps. We have to find more clues, Eleanor said. 15 years with no news. He could be anywhere. Or he could be... Anne-Claire didn't finish the sentence. Let's not think about that, Martha interrupted. Until we're sure, we'll assume he's alive. Mrs. Hazel, who had remained discreet throughout the entire situation, finally spoke up. Maybe I can help. Everyone turned to her. What do you mean, Mrs. Hazel? Well, I worked for Mr. Thomas for many years. I knew some of his friends, people he did business with. What kind of business? Eleanor asked. He never told me exactly, but I know he traveled a lot, always to different cities, and he received visits from people who didn't seem entirely honest. Eleanor felt a chill. Mrs. Hazel, are you suggesting Thomas was involved in illegal activities? I don't know, Mrs. Eleanor, but there was always something that bothered me. He had a lot of money, more than a regular businessman should have, and he always paid everything in cash. Businessman? Martha interjected. He told me he was a car salesman. And he told me he owned an import company, Eleanor added. Anne-Claire sighed. More and more lies. Mrs. Hazel, Audrey asked, do you know any of these friends of his? Anyone who might have information? There's a man, Mr. Frank. He owned a bar downtown. Mr. Thomas went there often. If anyone knows anything, it's him. The next day, the four of them went to Mr. Frank's bar. It was a simple, somewhat run-down establishment, frequented by older men playing dominoes and drinking beer. Mr. Frank was a man in his 60s, bald with a prominent belly. When they saw a group of elegant women approach, everyone in the bar stopped talking. Mr. Frank, Eleanor approached, we'd like to talk to you about Thomas Sterling, or Stephen Parker. The man looked visibly uncomfortable. I don't know anyone by those names. Please, Martha pleaded, we need to find him. There are very important family matters. Mr. Frank looked around nervously and gestured for them to follow him to a table in the back of the bar. Look, you all seem like nice people, but messing with Thomas, that could be dangerous. Dangerous how? Anne-Claire asked. Thomas was mixed up in complicated things. Money laundering, fake documents, that sort of thing. Nothing violent, but illegal enough to make enemies. Eleanor felt the world spinning. Money laundering. He was a middleman. He received dirty money and turned it into clean investments. He was good at what he did, but 15 years ago something went wrong. What happened? Some guys showed up looking for him. They wanted back a very large sum that had disappeared. Thomas panicked. He said he'd have to disappear for a while. And do you know where he went? Mr. Frank hesitated for a long time. He mentioned once that he had a refuge, a place where he could hide if things got ugly. But he never said where it was. Is there nothing else you can tell us? Just one thing. If you really want to find Thomas, look for Dr. Richard at the private clinic in the Upper East Side. He treated Thomas a few times. If anyone knows where he is, it's Dr. Richard. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Mercy General Hospital was a discreet and expensive establishment located in an upscale neighborhood in Chicago. Dr. Richard Hayes was a 50-year-old man, well-dressed and with a professional air, but his eyes revealed concern when Eleanor mentioned Thomas's name. Ladies, you understand that I can't disclose medical information about my patients, right? Doctor, Martha stepped closer, we're not here out of curiosity. This man is the father of our daughters and disappeared 15 years ago. We just want to know if he's okay. Dr. Richard walked to the office window and stood in silence for a few minutes. Thomas Sterling, he finally murmured. It's been a long time since I've heard that name. So you know him? I did. He was my patient, but also, well, let's just say I helped him with some matters that went beyond medicine. What do you mean? Medical documentation, certificates, reports, that sort of thing. Nothing that caused anyone harm, but not exactly within the law. Eleanor felt they were finally getting close to the truth. Dr. Richard, please. We just want to know what happened to him. The doctor sighed deeply. Thomas came to see me for the last time 3 years ago. He was very sick. Sick how? Neurological problems, progressive memory loss. He was losing the ability to recognize people, to form new memories. Martha instinctively held Anne-Claire's hand. And where is he now? At a specialized clinic, a private institution that cares for patients with severe neurological problems. He won't recognize you. We don't care, Anne-Claire said firmly. We need to see him. The name of the clinic is Hope Neurological Center. It's 2 hours from here toward New York City, but ladies, Dr. Richard warned them, be prepared. The Thomas you're about to meet is not the man you once knew. The trip to Hope Neurological Center was made in silence. Each of the 4 women was lost in her own thoughts, imagining what the reunion with Thomas would be like after so many years. The institute was a beautiful place, with well-kept gardens and modern architecture. The director, Dr. Patricia Owens, received them in her office. Are you family of Mr. Thomas? We are, Eleanor replied. He's my husband and the father of these 2 young women. Understand that his case is very serious. He's in an advanced stage of dementia. He doesn't recognize people, doesn't form new memories, and has episodes of mental confusion. How long has he been here? Martha asked. 3 years. He was admitted by a friend who chose not to identify himself, but who pays for all the expenses. A bank account automatically deposits the treatment amount every month. Can we see him? You can, but don't expect him to recognize you. And please don't try to force memories, it can agitate him. Thomas was sitting in a wheelchair in the garden, staring at the horizon with a blank expression. At 55, he looked much older. His hair was completely grey and he had lost a considerable amount of weight. Thomas? Eleanor approached slowly. He looked at her with no sign of recognition. Hi, he said simply, the way he would to any stranger. Martha knelt beside the wheelchair. Thomas, do you remember me? Martha. He watched her for a few seconds, but there was no reaction. Anne-Claire. Anne-Claire introduced herself. I'm Anne-Claire, your daughter. For a moment, something seemed to shine in Thomas's eyes. He reached out his hand and gently touched Anne-Claire's face. Anne-Claire, he repeated softly. Pretty girl. Anne-Claire began to cry. Do you remember me, Daddy? But the moment had passed. Thomas went back to staring at the horizon with the same blank expression. Audrey approached and held his hand. "Daddy, it's me, Audrey. Your daughter, Audrey." Thomas looked at her and smiled faintly. "Pretty girl," he repeated, using the same words he had said to Anne Claire. They spent an hour with him, talking, telling stories, trying to spark some memory. Occasionally he seemed to pay attention, but most of the time he was absent. When they were getting ready to leave, Thomas held Martha's hand. "I'm sorry," he said clearly. "For what, Thomas?" "I'm sorry," he repeated, but then he returned to his previous state. On the trip back, the four women cried. All the fantasies about confronting Thomas, getting explanations, demanding answers had vanished. He was sick, helpless, a fragment of the man he had been. "At least we know he didn't abandon us out of malice," Audrey said, trying to find something positive in the situation. "And we know that deep down he felt remorse for what he did," Eleanor added. "But we still don't know why he did all of it," Anne Claire observed. "Maybe we'll never know," Martha admitted. "But at least now we know he didn't choose to leave us." In the following months, the four women developed a routine. They visited Thomas at the Institute weekly, even knowing he didn't recognize them. Gradually, they built an unconventional family, united by shared pain and love for their daughters. Anne Claire transferred to a university in Chicago to be closer to Martha. Eleanor insisted that both she and Martha live in the mansion. "It's too big a house for just two people," Eleanor justified. "Besides, your family." "But I'm just your former housekeeper," Martha protested. "You're the mother of my stepdaughter and the former companion of my husband. That makes us family, in a strange way, but family all the same." Audrey and Anne Claire became very close, developing a sisterly bond that had been denied to them during childhood. "It's funny," Anne Claire commented one night. "I always wanted a sister. I never imagined I already had one." "And I always wanted my father to come back," Audrey replied. "I never imagined that when he came back he'd bring an entire family with him." Martha, for her part, was learning to be a mother to a young adult. 15 years of separation couldn't be recovered overnight, but she was determined to build a solid relationship with Anne Claire. "Mum," Anne Claire called her one day. It had taken months for her to feel comfortable using that word. "Don't you resent having missed my childhood?" "Of course I do," Martha answered honestly. "But dwelling on the past won't give me those years back. I'd rather focus on the time we still have ahead of us." Eleanor, on the other hand, was dealing with the complex task of rebuilding her view of her marriage. "For 15 years I idealized Thomas," she confided to Mrs. Hazel. "I created a romantic version of him, as if he were a hero who had tragically disappeared. Finding out he had a double life and was involved in illegal activities, it's as if I had been married to a stranger." "Mrs. Eleanor, people are complicated. Mr. Thomas did wrong things, but he also did right things. He loved you all, in his own way." "How can you be sure?" "Because I saw the way he looked at you and at Audrey, and from what we found out he protected Claire and Martha from danger. Maybe he made the wrong decisions, but with good intentions." 6 months after the reunion, the family had found a new balance. Anne Claire was doing well at the university, Audrey had become more mature and responsible, Eleanor was learning to forgive, and Martha had finally found peace. But life rarely allows people to stay in their comfort zone for too long. During one of their visits to the center, Dr. Patricia called them in for a private conversation. "There's something you need to know about Thomas. In the last few days he's been having longer periods of lucidity. It's common in some cases of dementia to have periods of temporary improvement." "What does that mean?" Eleanor asked. "It means he might be able to answer some questions if you ask at the right moment." "And how will we know when it's the right moment?" "You'll notice. He'll seem more present, more aware of what's happening around him." On the next visit, they found Thomas more alert than usual. He was looking intently at the gardens and seemed to actually be seeing what was in front of him. "Thomas?" Eleanor approached cautiously. He turned to her, and for the first time in months there was recognition in his eyes. "Eleanor?" he said, his voice hoarse but clear. "Yes, it's me." Thomas looked around and saw Martha, Audrey, and Anne Claire. "Martha. Claire. How did you—" "We found each other," Martha explained gently. "We discovered the truth about you. Thomas began to cry. I ruined everything. I destroyed everyone's lives. Thomas, Anne-Claire knelt beside him. Why did you do this? Why did you separate me from my mother? He looked at her with a mixture of love and pain. I had to protect you. There were dangerous people looking for me. If they found out about you... But why didn't you tell us the truth? Because the truth was worse. I had stolen a lot of money from very dangerous people, money I used to support both families. I thought I could pay it all back and no one would find out, but they found out, Eleanor finished. Yes, and they made it clear that if I didn't return the money, you would pay the price. So I took Claire and put her somewhere safe, and then I disappeared, so they wouldn't find you. And the money? Audrey asked. I never managed to gather it all, that's why I stayed hidden for so long. But as the years went by, my mind started to fail. I couldn't remember the details anymore, the names, the places. When the dementia finally set in completely, I came here. Martha held his hand. Thomas, do you understand that there are other ways to solve problems? You could have told us the truth. I was afraid of losing you, afraid you would hate me. So I made the decision on my own, and it was the wrong decision. And now? Anne-Claire asked. Are the dangerous people still looking for you? Thomas shook his head. I don't know. My memory. It comes and goes. Sometimes I remember everything clearly. Other times I don't even know who I am. Eleanor approached and held his face between her hands. Thomas, I need you to tell me something. Did you love me? Did you really love me? More than my own life, he answered, without hesitating. And I loved Martha too. I know this is confusing and wrong, but I couldn't choose between you. You two were the women of my life, just at different times. And us? Audrey asked. Did you love us? You two are my greatest achievement, he said, looking at Audrey and Anne-Claire. Everything I did wrong in life, but you two are proof that something good came out of all of it. The moment of clarity lasted about an hour. After that, Thomas went back to his previous state, but the women had gotten the answers they needed. On the way back, they talked about what they had discovered. He made wrong decisions, Eleanor observed, but for reasons he believed were right. That doesn't excuse what he did, Anne-Claire said, but at least now we understand why. And you two? Martha asked the young women. How do you feel about your father now? Audrey thought carefully before answering. I'm still angry with him, but I also feel sorry for him. He spent 15 years hidden away, alone, and now he's sick. I think he's already paid for what he did. And you, Anne? I spent 15 years imagining who my biological father was. I created in my head a perfect man who would one day come for me. Finding out he's just a flawed man who made mistakes. It's disappointing, but it's also more human. In the following months, Thomas had a few more moments of clarity, but they became increasingly rare and short. Gradually, his condition deteriorated, and he came to need more and more intensive care. The family had settled into a routine of regular visits, and the four women had found a way to function as a family unit, despite the unusual circumstances. Martha had adapted well to life in the mansion and developed a close relationship with Eleanor. They discovered they had a lot in common, besides the fact that they had both been deceived by the same man. It's funny, Eleanor commented one day while they were having coffee together. 15 years ago, we were rivals without knowing it. Today, we're best friends. Rivals? Martha laughed. I didn't even know you existed. Neither did I know about you. But in a way, we were competing for the same man, for the same future. And now? Now we've discovered that we can have a future together, as a family. A strange family, but a family nonetheless. Anne-Claire and Audrey had also developed a very close relationship. They studied together, went out together, and occasionally fought like real sisters. Sometimes I forget we didn't grow up together, Audrey said one day. It feels like you've always been in my life. I feel the same way. It's like there was an empty space in my life that I didn't know existed, and now that space is filled. A year after the reunion, during a routine visit to the institute, Dr. Patricia called them in for another conversation. Thomas is deteriorating quickly. We believe he doesn't have much time." "How much time?" Eleanor asked. "A few weeks, maybe a month or two." The news was devastating, even knowing that this moment would come eventually. "Will he suffer?" Martha asked. "No. He will gradually lose his basic functions, but without pain." "And will there be more moments of clarity?" "It's possible, but unlikely." The four women spent the following weeks taking turns staying with Thomas. They talked to him, read books, played music, even knowing he probably wasn't understanding. "Why do we do this?" Anne-Claire asked one day. "He doesn't even know we're here." "Because we know," Eleanor answered. "And because it's the right thing to do." 3 weeks later, on a sunny Thursday morning, Thomas had his last moment of clarity. He opened his eyes and seemed truly present. The four women were by his side when it happened. "You're all here," he murmured, his voice weak but clear. "We are," Martha replied. "I want you to know," he paused to catch his breath, "that even though I did everything wrong, these moments here with you are the happiest of my life." "Thomas," Eleanor began. "No. Let me finish. I destroyed our family, but you managed to build a new one. A better family than I could ever have given you." He looked at each of them. "Eleanor, you are the strongest woman I know. Thank you for raising Audrey on your own and for taking care of all of us now. Martha, your love for Claire inspired me every day. Even when I was doing everything wrong, I knew you loved her the right way. Audrey, you've become an incredible young woman. I'm so sorry I wasn't there to see you grow up. Claire, you were always my special girl. I'm sorry I stole your childhood with your mother, but I'm glad to see you two found each other again." He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "Can you forgive me?" The four women answered at the same time. "Yes." Thomas smiled and closed his eyes, and he never opened them again. 5 days later, Thomas passed away peacefully in his sleep. The four women were present at the moment, holding his hands and softly singing the lullabies Martha used to sing to Claire. The funeral was small and intimate. Besides the four women and Mrs. Hazel, only Dr. Richard and Mr. Frank attended. There were no long speeches or elaborate eulogies. Eleanor simply said, "Thomas was a complicated man who made difficult decisions. He made mistakes, but he also gave us precious gifts. He gave us Audrey, he gave us Anne-Claire, and indirectly, he gave us each other. May he rest in peace." In the months following the funeral, the family went through a period of adjustment. Thomas's presence, even in his debilitated state, had been a link that held them together. Now they needed to discover if their bond was strong enough to survive without him. Initially, there were tensions. Anne-Claire questioned whether she should continue living in the mansion now that Thomas had passed away. Eleanor wondered if her responsibility toward Martha had come to an end. Audrey felt lost without the father figure, even a distant one. It was Mrs. Hazel who brought the necessary perspective. "You're thinking about this the wrong way," she said during a tense conversation in the kitchen. "You're not a family because Mr. Thomas brought you together. You're a family because you chose to be a family." "What do you mean?" Anne-Claire asked. "Look around you." Mrs. Eleanor could have sent Martha away the moment she discovered the truth. Martha could have resented Mrs. Eleanor for having the life she never had. The girls could have been jealous of each other. But you chose the opposite. You chose to support each other, to take care of each other, to love each other. "But that was because of the exceptional situation," Eleanor argued. "No, it was because of your character. And character doesn't change when circumstances change." The conversation with Mrs. Hazel was a turning point. The four women realized they had become a true family, not just because of the circumstances, but by choice. "I don't want you to feel obligated to keep me here," Martha said during a family meeting they organized. "And I don't want you to feel obligated to stay," Eleanor replied, "but I want you to know that I would love for you to stay. Not out of obligation, but because you've become my best friend. And I want my mother to stay," Anne-Claire added. "I have 15 years of catching up to do with her. And I want my sister to stay here," Audrey said, looking at Anne-Claire. "And I want my second mother to stay too." Second mother? Martha asked. You're not my biological mother, but you take care of me like a mother. Doesn't that make you my second mother? Martha began to cry. I would be honored to be your second mother. And so, 2 years after their first chance meeting, the unconventional family of Eleanor, Martha, Audrey, and Anne Claire had solidified. They established their own traditions, celebrated holidays together, supported one another through difficult times, and celebrated successes together. Anne Claire earned her degree in education and got a job at a nearby school. Audrey enrolled in college to study psychology, inspired by the complex family dynamics she had experienced. Eleanor resumed community projects she had abandoned during the years of mourning Thomas. Martha discovered she had a talent for cooking and started making homemade sweets to sell. 15 years ago, I lost my daughter, Martha said one night as they were all gathered in the living room watching television. I thought my life was over. Today I have a daughter, a stepdaughter, a best friend, and a home full of love. 15 years ago, I lost my husband, Eleanor added. I spent all those years idealizing what we had lost. Today I discovered that what we have now is much better. I spent 15 years not knowing who I really was, Anne Claire said. Today I know that I am a daughter, a sister, Mrs. Hazel's adopted granddaughter, and part of a family that chose to love me. And I grew up dreaming of having siblings and a bigger family, Audrey added. Today I have all of that, just not in the way I imagined. Mrs. Hazel, who had officially become part of the family, entered the room carrying a tray with cake and tea. And I, she said, after 50 years of taking care of other people's homes, finally have a family of my own to take care of. 5 years after their first meeting, the 5 women continued living together in the mansion that had transformed from a house of secrets into a home full of love. They had learned that family is not defined by blood or traditional roles, but by daily choices to love, support, and forgive one another. Thomas had passed away, taking with him all the secrets and explanations they would have liked to hear. But he had also left an unexpected legacy. He had brought together 5 women who, alone, were strong, but together were unbreakable. Their story didn't have the ending any of them would have imagined 15 years earlier. It wasn't the perfect fairy tale ending, nor the tragic ending of dramas. It was a real ending, complex, bittersweet, but deeply satisfying. Martha found her daughter. Eleanor found a new family. Anne Claire found her roots. Audrey found sisters. Mrs. Hazel found a home. And they all learned that sometimes the best families are the ones life gives us when we least expect them, made up of people who come to us through winding and painful paths, but who choose to stay out of love. In 15 years of searching, separation, and pain, they discovered that the solution to their problems was not in finding answers about the past, but in building a future together. And so, on a sunny Sunday morning, as they all had breakfast together in the kitchen that had become the heart of their home, they knew they had found exactly what they were looking for: a true family made of love, forgiveness, and daily choices to be present for one another. Thomas had disappeared from their lives twice. The first time brought pain and separation, the second time brought peace and unity. And although they would never forget the pain of the lost years, they were grateful for the time they had found together. The end of the story. So what did you think of this touching story? How would you have reacted in Martha's place upon discovering the truth? And Eleanor, do you think she made the right choice by welcoming her husband's family? We really want to know your opinion in the comments. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories.